Hey lovelies! I know how busy you all are, so I am always looking to share easy weeknight dinner ideas that come together in a snap, clean up really fast, and that you can still feel really good about. And today I am doing just that with these 3 amazing rice skillets. So just one pan, which means fewer dishes, and dinner on the table in absolutely no time. Just before we get to all of that deliciousness, I did want to mention that our brand new website is finally live. This has been a labor of love for almost a year now, so I'm so excited to share it with all of you. Of course, you can find today's recipes, plus a ton of great Domestic Geek classic recipes on the site, and there's lots more to check out, so be sure to do so. And if you head over today, we are offering 25% off on all of our ebooks, so you can take a look for those as well. Now, without further ado, let's get to some dinner. For my first rice skillet today, I am making an absolute classic in my household. It's an herbed chicken and rice skillet, and of course, it starts with some chicken. I'm just going to season it up with some salt and some pepper as I do. Next, I've got a little bit of oil heating up in the bottom of a skillet. It's important to have a nice wide bottom skillet because we're going to be cooking 4 chicken breasts in it and then also adding our rice. So you wanna make sure your skillet has enough volume to accommodate everything. Once your oil's heated up, you can get your chicken breast into the pan. I like doing it top side down first. That's how you get the best browning happening. In the meantime, we'll just go ahead and season the underside. More salt, more pepper, all good things. After about 6 minutes or so, it will be ready to flip, and we'll let it cook on the other side until it is equally golden. Another 4 minutes or so should do the trick. Once your chicken has browned on the underside, you can go ahead and just transfer it to a clean plate. Now, it's important to keep in mind this chicken is not fully cooked through yet. We are going to be adding it back into the pan. In the meantime though, I have got a couple tablespoons of butter headed back into my skillet. And as soon as that butter is melted, I'm going to add some diced onion and some diced celery. I'll let those cook up for 3 minutes or so, or until they're nice and soft. It's so nice to do this cooking in the actual chicken pan because of course, all of those little brown bits on the bottom of the pan are wonderful chicken flavor. And as soon as those veggies start to soften up, you can go ahead and add your garlic to this as well. Once your garlic's down, you'll know because you can smell it right away, and that means it's also time to add our rice to the pan. I'm using long grain white rice in all of these recipes. It's really, really affordable. I always have it in my pantry, and it cooks up in very little time. I like letting my rice cook up with my veggies for about a minute before adding any liquid to the pan. This just helps the rice to develop a really nice flavor, but it's important to keep stirring it because of course you don't want your rice to burn. As soon as the rice has turned translucent, you know it's time to go ahead and add your chicken broth to the pan. As soon as you start to see some bubbles break the surface of that chicken broth, you know it's time to reduce your heat to low, return your chicken into the pan and cover this, and we're going to let it cook away for about 15 minutes or until our rice has absorbed almost all of that liquid and our chicken has reached a safe internal temperature of 165 degrees Fahrenheit on a meat thermometer. At this point, I'll just remove my chicken from the skillet and finish this yumminess off by stirring in some gorgeous fresh herbs. So I've got some freshly chopped dill headed in here, some chopped parsley, and some chopped chives. This is gonna be so good. While I'm at it, I am going to add a good squeeze of fresh lemon juice to this. You can see how creamy this is. It's almost like a risotto texture. Lots to love about that. I love to serve this hot right out of the skillet, but the leftovers also make for a delicious lunch the next day. So you've basically taken care of 2 meals in one. You're welcome. Next up, I've got a really fun, kid-friendly, cheesy lasagna skillet, which you know has to be good because of course it's gonna taste like lasagna. And anything that tastes like lasagna is okay with me, especially these days when all this baby wants is lasagna. And it all starts once again with some oil heating up on the stove. As soon as that oil is hot, we can add our ground beef to the stove. If you're not into ground beef, not to worry, you could go ahead and swap in some ground chicken or turkey, or if you wanted to keep this a little spicier, you could go ahead and add some hot Italian sausage here instead. While this is cooking away, we can season it up with some salt and some pepper, always a good idea. Once our ground beef is cooked, we're gonna go ahead and start building in the rest of our ingredients. So I've got a diced onion headed in here. I've also got a diced red bell pepper headed in here. I'll give those about 3 minutes to soften up a little bit before adding my garlic to the pan. And as soon as that garlic is nice and fragrant, it is time to add our rice to the pan. Once again, I'm going to let it cook up for another 1 to 2 minutes, stirring it constantly until it's turned translucent. Then I'm going to sauce this up a little bit with some tomato sauce as well as some beef broth. And then finally, we're going to add a little bit of Italian seasoning. If you're looking for a great recipe for homemade Italian seasoning, I happen to have one on my website. How convenient is that? So I will link it in the description. You can take a look for it there. Once this mixture comes to a boil, we'll just reduce our heat to low, cover it up, and let it cook away for about 15 minutes or until our rice is nice and tender. Exciting things are afoot in this skillet, ladies and gentlemen. Kind of smells like Hamburger Helper, which, I don't know, if you were around when I was a kid, it's never a bad thing. I am going to add some much needed greens to this, just because we should all be getting more greens in our life, and this is an easy way to sneak some in. So I have about 2 cups of baby spinach. I'm just gonna stir into my rice. And then we've got our finishers, because this is a cheesy lasagna skillet after all, so we're missing our cheese. I have got some shredded mozzarella headed in here. I'm going to basically stir in half of my mozzarella, and then the rest I'll sprinkle on top of my skillet with a good sprinkling of freshly grated Parmesan. Now, at this point, you have 2 options. You can either pop the lid back on your skillet and let that cheese melt away on the stovetop, or if you want something a little golden and bubbly, go ahead and put it under the broiler for just a minute or 2, or until you've created a nice cheesy crust for this. Just make sure, of course, that your skillet is oven safe. What you've got is beefy, cheesy deliciousness that actually tastes a lot like lasagna, but come on, only took 20 minutes to make. Finally, guys, I have a vegetarian taco skillet that is hearty and satisfying, but comes together in a flash and is perfect for Meatless Monday. I am starting with a nice cast iron skillet on the stove. To that, I'm going to add a little bit of oil. Once my oil is nice and hot, I'll get my veggies into it, a little bit of onion, and some green and red bell pepper. Use any color bell pepper your heart desires. It's not gonna change anything in this dish except for the color. As soon as those veggies are softened, after say 4 minutes or so, we can go ahead and add a clove of minced garlic to this. And then once our garlic is fragrant, we can stir in our rice and our taco seasoning. Again, you have the option to use store-bought taco seasoning here, but it can be pretty heavy in the sodium department, so I always recommend making your own if you can. I, again, will link a recipe in the description box below for you. I'm just going to stir that up and let it cook for about 2 minutes or so until the rice is translucent and the taco seasoning has really reached its maximum flavor potential. That's how you know it's time to add your wet ingredients. So I've got some diced tomatoes headed in here. I've also got 1 4-ounce can of green chilies. You can usually find these in the Mexican section of your supermarket. And finally, I'm going to round that all out with some vegetable broth. We're going to stir this up, bring it to a boil, and as soon as it reaches a boil, we'll reduce our heat to low, pop that lid on, and let it cook away for about 15 minutes, or as I mentioned before, until the rice is nice and tender. Cooking times can vary depending on the kind of rice you're using, so keep that in mind. As soon as that rice is nice and tender, I'm going to remove my lid and stir in my last 2 ingredients. I've got some corn kernels headed in here. I'm using frozen that I just thawed out, and some canned black beans that I have drained and rinsed. These last 2 ingredients are amazing because they really only need to be heated through for another 2 or 3 minutes, and this yumminess is ready to be served. I love dishing it up with some sour cream, some lime wedges, and some cilantro, but if you want to skip the sour cream, you've got a vegan dinner that your whole family can feel good about. I can't even begin to tell you guys how delicious this dish is. Seriously. I hope you'll give all 3 of these 1 skillet dinner ideas a try, and if you do, be sure to tweet me, Instagram me, or Facebook me a photo, because I love seeing your kitchen creations. Keep in mind, as always, the recipes are linked in the description box below and available on my fancy new updated website, which I hope you'll check out. And finally, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because there is lots more deliciousness where this came from.